All right, so Matthew, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
We just finished up your keynote here at the Techno, what's that?
Digital Forensics Conference.
Well, it's the Digital Forensics Conference. Techno something else. It's the longest name I've ever heard. I wanted to talk to you about what's going on with North Korea.
Okay.
Because that has been that's been in the news, and they have started upping their game ever since President Trump left Vietnam. We also had a spike in their activity at the last North Korean summit. But some of the things that you were saying, we're talking about in your keynote, that there are 6,500 data breaches in the past year with 5 billion records, and that there are ransomware attacks every 14 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I went running back to is that you said more than half of the companies being attacked, and I assume that means banks as well, are not collecting the data on who these people are and how they're getting in.
Well, the banking industry has been one of those victims that have felt the heat for many, many, many years. And so they were one of the first to actually start to invest in cybersecurity. And if you look at some of the big banks, especially in the US, but even across the globe, they tend to have a much larger and much more mature cybersecurity program. And it's simply because they were victimized first. Mm-hmm. They learned the lessons first, and it took a while. Mm-hmm. And then they were able to respond. So, overall, the industry is struggling. The financial community is probably a step and a half ahead of most.
Mm-hmm. But still, North Korea got away with almost $1 billion in the past year.
Yeah, and it's not just North Korea. There are organized crime, syndicates that do the same thing. So money's, something everyone's after. And when you look at different countries, whether it be, North Korea or somebody else, having hard currency, that helps them.
Well, yeah, and I understand that that's their reasoning for it, and that they're doing most of their work on the dark web.
Yeah, dark web is a great place to be able to share information and store information and connect things and be able to use as an infrastructure potentially for attacks and whatnot. But, don't limit what we perceive now as everything. Think of it more as an iceberg, and we're seeing the tip of it. There's probably a lot more going on. And, cybersecurity and cyber attacks tend to be a great equalizer. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have the most modern army or economic system. You can, with a small amount of resources, go out there and be able to harass your opponents or be able to gain resources or footholds or intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it's going on in all those spaces. And there are a lot of countries out there that we wouldn't normally expect to be able to put up a front against very large, powerful countries in the world, and yet they're able to in cyberspace. So it's a great equalizer. Mm-hmm.
But my question is North Korea using the dark web? Well, let me back up a little bit. Yesterday, Angel Grant from RSA mm-hmm. was talking about how the real problem is not in the dark web. As a matter of fact, she said she was watching a movie, some Disney movie about, they're using the dark web to get our information. And she started laughing out loud because from her documentation, like 90% of the attacks are coming from what's known as the gray web. And they're out there hiding in plain sight, and they're mm-hmm. using common techniques. And that's what made me think about North Korea at that point, because most of their attacks have been in the area of spear phishing mm-hmm. and ransomware. And as you mentioned in your talk, is that there are organizations out there with full IT departments and marketing departments that are selling the tools needed to do this stuff. Now, is North Korea buying that stuff and doing it on the gray market or the gray web, or are they actually doing their own stuff internally?
Well, 90% of all attacks somehow involve a person, right? We call them the wetware. And it's very easy why to understand that. The human element tends to be the weakest.
Yeah.
And no matter who you are, whether you're a nation state or a criminal or whatnot, you tend to follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
you have an objective, you have motivations that support that, I want to find the easiest and fastest way. And for a lot of compromises, in fact, the vast majority of them, that goes through a person. So, fishing or spearfishing, whaling, things of that sort, that tends to be the easiest way. And that bypasses a lot of the technology controls. And when we talk about cybersecurity, there's a technology aspect, there's a behavioral aspect, and there's the process that connects the two.
Okay.
And wherever the weakest link is, that's where you go. It's human nature. And right now, it tends to be the person.
Okay, and so that's where the problem is of the banking industry, which is, you say, is a step ahead.
It is.
Unfortunately, they're still using people.
Their customers are people.
Well,
Their
you
internal
got-
staff are people,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Yeah.
you will always have that element. It's a matter of making it more robust to make it more difficult for attacks, or be able to detect those attacks, or be able to respond to those, right?
Now, is that where, you also mentioned that artificial intelligence is going to be the big deal, and I know
It's going to be huge.
that the miscreants out there have taken a lead in artificial intelligence.
Sure.
And we're playing catch up. Matter of fact, Angel said, and I asked her point blank, are we getting any close to catching up with these guys? And she said, no. Just very, very simple answer.
But that's an old story, though. Think
Yeah.
about it. When technology gets developed, it's normally the attackers that are the first out of the gate
Yeah.
to use that for their purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tend to maintain the initiative. They determine what gets attacked and when and how. And it's security, and it's traditional, if you go back eons, right? Security tends to respond to bad things.
Yeah.
So we are a reactive. By nature, cybersecurity is reactive. And so, sure, that holds true in artificial intelligence, and it's held true, when we look through the past when new technologies are coming in.
Yeah.
So it's nothing new, right? But it's something that we should understand, and we should try and get ahead of that curve, shrink that window of exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
But my question, though, is that as we start adopting artificial intelligence, is that going to reduce the problem of the wetware? There are two examples that I can think of that I've talked to recently. One was Dr. Callium at University of Missouri. He's doing an AI project that they hope to productize within the next couple of years. He's been working on it for 2 years, where they identify potential attacks and put them off into a decoy system. So they think
A
that
HoneyNet,
they're-
a HoneyWeb,
yeah.
HoneyPot.
So they're working there, and then there's a company called Axiato that's employing artificial intelligence directly into their hardware, right on the chip level. The idea is to be able to see these things as they come in, and if they look at all suspicious, to put them off to the side until they can figure out what to do with them, or to actually create defenses on the fly if possible. Are we getting close to that point with our technology that this will seem to be widespread?
Yeah, I think we are. We've already seen a lot of companies out there that are developing AI systems to help understand network traffic, to help identify malware or even fileless malware on the endpoints. We're looking at artificial intelligence that's trying to look at the spoofing, right, or the spam and phishing attempts. So again, AI is a tremendously powerful tool, and it can be used for many different use cases, both good and malicious.
Yeah.
So we're seeing the creative aspects of cybersecurity, the companies, the researchers, and whatnot, apply it in different ways. And anytime you have to look at a vast amount of data and process it very, very quickly and understand potentially what's bad versus what's good, AI can be a strong contender in that space. It's not the only one, right? And there's different subsets of AI. Right? A lot of focus recently has been in machine learning and deep learning because it's shown some great promise, especially in identifying something, right? What's different in this picture. Right? So we're going to see that play out more and more. But there's assisted learning, and there's other things that come into play, and regular tools, right? Being able to simply identify bad traffic. We've been doing that ever since the network was born, right? If you look at firewalls and everything else. So the concept is not new, but the tools are jumping up, and they will increase that kind of tug of war, that arms race, if you will. If you can imagine a security company coming up with an ability to look at malicious traffic, maybe detect it on the network, right? Certain characteristics, and flag that. If they get really good at that, you're going to see attackers use the same technology to figure out what can't be caught, what can get by it. And then you're going to see the other side respond to that, and back and forth. And we've seen this in malware, and we've seen this with attacks. We've even seen it with behavioral attacks against people. It's just an escalation. This is another tool in that adversarial nature of what cybersecurity is.
Okay, so once people get over their fear of AI and start incorporating, because that's one of the things you talked about.
Yeah.
People, I mean, the fear of AI goes back many years.
Oh, it does.
Do you remember a book called Colossus, the Forbin Project?
No, I don't.
Okay, they made a movie out of it. Okay, I read it years ago. It was about two computers, one in the Soviet Union, one in the United States. Both of them become self-aware. Okay, and then they connect with each other and decide to wipe out the human race.
Right.
Okay.
The weak link.
Yes. That's the basic fear people have of AI.
Sure.
Okay.
You look at HAL, or you look at war games, self-aware Terminator. Fear can run rampant, and it's entertaining.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I was talking to somebody about this a while back, and they were saying those are unfounded fears, simply because even if AI is in charge of all this stuff, it still needs human beings to maintain it.
Yes.
Okay? And so just from a basic self-preservation mode, AI is going to want to make sure that human beings stay okay.
I would hope so, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't turn into a Matrix kind of situation.
That's one of the basic robotic rules from Isaac Asimov, who said, "Do no harm.
Right.
Don't kill people." Yeah. So we've got that going for us. But once we get to this place of AI, what's the next step beyond that? Because there's always this step, and the bad guys are going to get out there and try and find another way to get around this.
Absolutely.
Have we figured out what that is yet? Or have they figured out what it is?
I don't think the world has figured out yet all the different use cases for AI. And it's a shame if people are looking at AI with only the concern of fears, because it also brings with it a tremendous potential to connect and enrich our lives. And we have to look at that first. And what we really need to be advocating is for the industry and academia, where a lot of AI really resides right now, is to get them to understand that there are both risks and opportunities. And how do we fashion it? How do we think ahead and help craft AI systems and logics to be more beneficial, lend itself to the beneficial side versus lending itself to the malicious side?
Okay.
And that's where we need to move. We shouldn't be concerned, any more than we were when the invention of the automobile.
Yeah.
Right? Automobiles kill a lot of people, granted.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine a world that we live in today without automobiles. So,
150 billion of them.
yes, a lot of them. And, it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
And on one hand, it causes injuries and loss of life and pollution. But on the other hand, it's also connected us. It shrunk the world. It allows, food distribution and everything else that we need, that we cling to, that we would not give up. So it has enriched our lives. So again, powerful tools can be used in both ways.
Gartner has this thing they call the product cycle.
Yes.
And
The hype cycle.
Yeah, the hype cycle. And it seems like we are, as far as digital technology goes, we are entering in the trough of despair. As far as the public's acceptance of it. I mean, there's time everybody wanted to have a phone, everybody wanted to have a computer, everybody wants to have all these devices.
Sure.
But I was just reading the Wall Street Journal today about how there's a big market now for dumb phones. Where people are going on vacation and leaving their smartphones, and they're only taking these little tiny things. And
right. Return to the flip phone.
Yeah. And there's a company out there that's putting out a phone that can act as a Wi-Fi hotspot, but you can't do anything. You can just text and do phone calls with it.
Right.
Do you think that our reticence and our fear of AI is based on our disappointment in what technology has done to us individually?
I think we're so early in this journey. I wouldn't say we're in that trough of despair yet.
Okay.
I would say we're in step 3 of a 1,000-mile journey. Imagine, go back to just after the ARPANET, right? Where people thinking, hey, this could be great. We can start connecting more than just 2 systems, these 2 universities. What if we gave this to the public? What if we put this over the phone lines? And all of a sudden you had situations where people were using dial-up modems. I remember my old dial-up modem, right? But that was just the beginning. We had no concept of what it would turn into. There were a few bright ideas. There were a few fears, right? When war games came out, oh, look what's going to happen, right? Okay, fears. But we could not. There was not a single person that could paint the picture of today.
Yeah.
Right? We're in that same position with AI. There is no way for us to even imagine what AI, the tremendous benefits and opportunities it's going to have. And so what do we have? If we don't have facts, we're left with fear. We're left in uncertainty and doubt. So then we start talking about, well, what about the Terminator scenario, self-awareness? What about jobs being taken away, right? Without facts, we fall back to the dark side of what we're concerned with. And again, think about the car, right? Prior to the car, everything was around horses, the blacksmiths, saddle makers, horseshoes. And when the car started coming out, what kind of fear was that? You're gonna lose all these jobs.
Yeah.
Where's the blacksmith gonna go? The saddle maker.
Yeah, the
Our
Luddites.
economy's gonna crash. Really? No, it really didn't. The Industrial Revolution? You know? So again, if we're only falling victim to our own fears, we're not seeing the opportunities. And again, humankind, society is great at seizing opportunities. And that's what we have to look towards. That's what we have to drive to. And with cybersecurity, everything moves faster. So we have to get to that point earlier. Right? Otherwise, we're going to start seeing some of those fears and some of those impacts.
Okay.
And we will get deeper into that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We don't want that. We have the opportunity to take a step forward, to understand both the opportunities, which are tremendous, as well as the potential risks, and manage those. But we have to work together, and we have to be honest about it. And so that's really where the industry needs to go. And I think we're going to see leadership with companies out there who are going to show us the tremendous benefits of AI. Unfortunately, we're also going to see attackers out there that are going to see the benefits of AI. We're going to have to manage it.
And are we ever going to catch up?
If you're asking if we're ever going to be secure, there is no such thing as perfect security.
Yeah.
Right? It's always a matter of managing risks. When you got up before you came to this conference and you left your house, you probably closed that door and locked it with a deadbolt. And there's a reason there was a deadbolt. There's a reason it wasn't a bank safe vault or a NORAD 6-foot thick blast door. Because you decided...
That would be cool, though.
It would. Oh, I know. Someone would get smashed in between. But you've decided that that's the right level of risk. Now, the reality is, a deadbolt lock, you can kick through it. And I've kicked through many in my time. Right? Is it impervious? No, it's not. But for you, that's the right level of risk. And it makes sense. It's cost effective. It's usable. Right? And so cybersecurity is the same thing. We're not trying to eliminate all chances of loss. That's impossible. And it would be hugely cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Right? It's a matter of finding that right risk level.
Yeah.
And so will we ever catch up? It'd be kind of boring if we did. I hope so.
Well,
but it's finding that optimal level of risk.
That's why one of my favorite quotes in the world is from Helen Keller, who said, "Security is an illusion, life is an adventure, or nothing at all." And I think we'll leave it at that.
Yes.
All right. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely.
All right.